More than 200 kilometers. That is the distance one barefoot man walked, crossing cracked fields beneath the scorching sun of northern India, only to find 5 people who had once turned their backs on him. He left Bodhgaya, the place where he had just awakened beneath the Bodhi tree, and set out toward the deer park at Sarnath, where 5 former companions still lived. These were the very men who, only months before, had called him a quitter, a traitor to the path of self-denial, and had abandoned him to sit alone. Now he was carrying to them the greatest gift a human being had ever been offered, but they did not know that yet. When they saw his figure approaching in the distance, they would swear to one another not to rise, not to greet him, not to welcome him at all. This is the story of the first sermon in the history of Buddhism, the day the wheel of the Dharma began to turn, and a religion was born out of 5 people who had once been disappointed. If you are walking your own path toward peace of mind, press subscribe and turn on the notification bell right now so you never miss a single chapter in the life of the Buddha that we bring you. Now, let us begin to walk. Let us go back a few weeks to Bodhgaya. The Buddha was now a different man from the figure of earlier episodes. His body had recovered from the years of extreme fasting, no longer gaunt, but balanced and full of quiet strength. His thick dark hair was gathered into a low knot at the back of his neck. His warm brown skin glowed beneath the sun, and his calm dark eyes were as deep as a lake without a single ripple. He wore a simple rough saffron robe draped over one shoulder. Anyone who passed him could not help but turn and look, though they did not know why. But within him, a great question had just been settled. Through the first weeks after his awakening, he had wondered, this truth is so profound, could anyone bear to hear it? And then, like a gardener gazing out over a pond of lotuses, he saw it clearly. Among humanity, there are always some lotuses that have risen close to the surface, waiting only for a ray of sunlight to bloom. He did not need to save the whole world in a single day. He needed only to light the first flame. The decision was firm. He would teach. But whom would he teach first? His first thought was of his 2 old meditation masters, but through his awakened insight, he knew that both had recently passed away. A flicker of sorrow crossed his face. Then he thought of 5 men, the 5 ascetics led by Kondañña, those who had shared 6 years of hunger with him in the forest of self-mortification. They were austere, they were sincere, they had traveled very far on the path of seeking. If anyone on earth was ready to listen, it was they. The irony was that these were the very men who had walked away from him. But the Buddha held no grudge. With eyes of compassion, he saw only 5 souls thirsting for the truth. And so, one morning, he left Bodhgaya, turned his back on the tree that had witnessed his awakening, and began the long journey northwest toward Sarnath. The road from Bodhgaya to Sarnath stretched more than 200 kilometers across the valley of the Ganges. The Buddha walked it alone, day after day, barefoot on the hot earth, begging for food in the villages along the way, sleeping beneath a tree when night fell. Each step he took was slow yet certain, no longer the hurried stride of the prince who once fled his palace, nor the staggering gait of the ascetic who had nearly starved to death. This was the walk of a complete human being, at rest within every breath. The scriptures tell us that along the road he met a naked wandering ascetic named Upaka. The man stopped short, struck by the Buddha's radiant presence, and asked, "Friend, your senses are so clear, your complexion so remarkably bright. Under whom do you practice? Who is your teacher?" The Buddha answered, with a truth so simple it was staggering. "I have no teacher. In all this world, there is no one equal to me. I am one who is self-awakened, who has attained the supreme truth alone." Upaka only shook his head, muttered, "May it be so, friend," and turned off onto another path. The first person in the world to hear the Buddha declare his awakening had walked away without believing. Imagine that moment. The first person he met turned his back. Had it been us, surely we would have lost heart, would have doubted ourselves. But the Buddha simply walked on, serene, without the slightest wavering, for he understood a truth does not need to be believed at once in order to be true. He needed only to keep walking. Many days passed, and then, in the distance, the deer park at Sarnath came into view. A grove of cool green trees, gentle deer grazing in the shade, an air of sacred stillness, and beneath one tree 5 familiar figures sat. The 5 ascetics, led by Kondañña, were seasoned men of self-denial. Their bodies were thin and hard from years of mortification. Their hair was matted into locks, their beards long, their frames wrapped in coarse cloth the color of the earth. Their faces were austere, their eyes stern, the eyes of men who had given their whole lives to seeking through the punishment of the body. When they saw the Buddha approaching from afar, they murmured among themselves in contempt, "Look, here comes the ascetic Gautama, the one who lost his resolve, who abandoned self-denial, who returned to a life of ease. Let us not rise to greet him. Let us not take his robe and bowl. Let him fend for himself. If he wishes to sit, let him find his own place." They had decided. They had built a cold wall in their hearts. But there was one thing they had not foreseen. As the Buddha drew closer, the cold pact of all 5 dissolved like mist in sunlight. Without a word between them, all 5 rose to their feet at once. One took his robe and bowl, one prepared a seat, one hurried to fetch water to wash his feet. The power radiating from a fully liberated soul was so strong that no prejudice could stand against it. Yet they were still uncertain. They addressed him by his old name as an equal, friend Gautama. The Buddha gently stopped them. Do not address the Tathagata by name as an equal any longer. Friends, the Tathagata is now the awakened one, the fully enlightened one. Listen, the door to the deathless is open. I will show you the path. Still they hesitated, questioning. Gautama, even in your most severe austerities you attain nothing. Now that you live in comfort again, how could you have reached the truth? But the Buddha patiently asked them in return. In all their years together, had they ever once heard him make such a declaration as this? No, never once. And that simple truth silenced them, and at last they opened their hearts to listen. Evening settled over the deer park. The 5 ascetics sat in a half-circle around the Buddha, their faces still doubtful, but their eyes now fixed intently upon him. And the wheel of the Dharma was about to move. Beneath the trees of the deer park, as the sun sank low and washed the whole grove in gold, the Buddha delivered his first teaching, the discourse that would come to be known as the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the setting in motion of the wheel of the Dharma. He began with the middle way. Friends, there are 2 extremes a seeker must avoid. One is indulgence in sensual pleasure, low, common, leading nowhere. The other is the torment of the body through self-mortification, painful, and also leading nowhere. Turning away from both extremes, the Tathagata has found the middle way, the path that opens the eye of wisdom, leading to peace, to insight, to awakening, to nirvana. These 5, more than anyone, understood the meaning of those words. They had traveled with him to the very end of self-denial and seen that it led only to a dead end. Now they were hearing of a third path. Then he gave them the heart of the entire teaching, the 4 noble truths. The first truth, suffering. Birth is suffering. Aging is suffering. Sickness is suffering. Death is suffering. To be parted from those we love is suffering. To be bound to those we despise is suffering. To want and not receive is suffering. Life, while we cling to it, is soaked in suffering. The second truth, the origin of suffering. The root of suffering is craving, an endless thirst, to have, to hold, to become. The third truth, the ending of suffering. Suffering can cease entirely. When craving is released, we touch freedom. This is the promise, the door to the deathless of which he spoke. The fourth truth, the path. There is a concrete way that leads to that ending. The noble eightfold path, the 8 branches of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. As he taught, something extraordinary unfolded in the mind of Kondañña, the eldest of the 5. In the midst of the Buddha's words, the eye of his wisdom opened. He saw, truly saw, that whatever is subject to arising is subject to ceasing. In that instant, he became the first person in the world to realize the Dharma. The scriptures tell us that the Buddha, sensing the dawning light, cried out in joy, "Kondañña has understood. Kondañña has truly understood." And from that day, he bore the name Anya Kondañña. Kondañña who understood. Only one had understood. Only one lotus had risen above the water, but that was enough. In the moment Kondañña awakened, something changed forever in the history of humankind. For the first time, the truth the Buddha had discovered was no longer his alone. It had been given, received, and had taken root in another soul. The wheel of the Dharma had truly begun to turn, and it would never stop. That night, beneath the stars of the deer park at Sarnath, the first Sangha was born, one Buddha and his first disciple. And within just a few days, the remaining 4 also awakened, one by one. From a single man sitting alone beneath the Bodhi tree at Bodhgaya, there were now 6 enlightened beings upon the earth, wearing the same saffron robe, walking the same road together. Remember where the journey began. 5 people who had once turned away, and one man who walked more than 200 kilometers to find them again. Had he chosen silence, none of this would exist. No Sangha, no teaching passed down, no lamp lit in millions of hearts across 2,500 years. Sometimes the greatest gift we can offer the world is not what we know, but the courage to speak it, even if only one person is listening. For one who understands becomes 2. 2 become 1,000, and 1,000 become a river of light flowing across time. If this story touched you, leave a single word in the comments so we know you are walking with us. And if you have not yet subscribed, press the subscribe button right now and turn on the bell. For every subscriber is one more lamp lit, helping the story of the Buddha reach more hearts. Become part of this small Sangha and walk with us on the journey ahead. Because after the first sermon at Sarnath, the Buddha's path had only just begun, and what waits ahead is more extraordinary still. May you be at peace, may your heart be light, and may we meet again in the next episode.